The little girl asked me if the man in the basement was my friend. I laughed it off. I figured she was messing with me. Kids do that. She was 7. 7-year-olds say things to get a reaction. I gave her one. That was my first mistake. My name is Derek. I was 19 that summer. I picked up the babysitting job through my neighbor, Carla. She babysat regularly for the Harmon family on Lake Shore Drive in Portage County, Ohio. Carla had a family thing one weekend and asked if I could cover. She vouched for me. The Harmons were fine with it. They paid well, and I needed the money for fall semester. Mrs. Harmon walked me through the house before they left. Living room, kitchen, downstairs bathroom. The kids' rooms were upstairs. Lily was 7. Her brother Owen was 9. The basement door was off the kitchen. Mrs. Harmon pointed at it and said it stayed locked. It was a simple sliding bolt, the kind you could flip with one finger. She said there was nothing down there except storage and a water heater. The kids knew not to go down. Mr. Harmon gave me their numbers on a sticky note. They were going to dinner about 40 minutes away in Ravenna. He said they'd be back by midnight. He shook my hand at the door. His grip was firm. He looked like someone who wanted you to know his grip was firm. The first hour was normal. I ordered a pizza from the Domino's on Route 14. I let the kids stay up and watch a movie. Owen wanted explosions. Lily wanted animals. We settled on a nature documentary that Lily fell asleep during almost immediately. Owen lasted about 20 minutes longer. I carried Lily upstairs first, then Owen, got them both into their rooms. Doors open a crack, hall light on, just like Mrs. Harmon had told me. It was 8:55. I went back down and ate the last 2 slices of pizza, turned the TV down low, settled in. That's when I heard it. A door upstairs, not slamming, just the soft click of a latch catching, like someone pulling a door closed carefully. I sat still and listened, nothing else. I told myself one of the kids had gotten up to use the bathroom. I waited 2 minutes, no toilet flushed, no footsteps back to bed. I went to the bottom of the stairs and called up quietly. No answer. I went up. Both doors were still open, the same crack. Both kids were in their beds, not moving. The bathroom door was open, no one in it. I checked the closets, empty. I went back downstairs. About 20 minutes later, Lily appeared at the top of the stairs. She stood there in her pajamas, rubbing one eye. I asked if she was okay. She nodded, then she said it. She asked me if the man in the basement was my friend. I kept my voice calm. I asked her what man. She said the man who walked around down there sometimes. She heard him at night. She thought he lived there. I told her it was probably just the water heater making noise. She looked at me the way kids look at adults when they know they're not being taken seriously. Then she went back to bed. I sat on the couch for a long time after that. I told myself it was nothing. Old houses make sounds. The Harmon place was pushing 30 years. Pipes settle, ductwork rattles, kids have imaginations. But I kept looking at the kitchen doorway. Past it, I could see the edge of the basement door. The refrigerator cycled on and off. The baseboard heat ticked. The TV murmured too low to make out words, ordinary sounds. I cataloged them one by one, the way you do when you're trying to convince yourself ordinary is all there is. Around 10 o'clock, my phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Nothing on the other end, not silence exactly, more like a held breath. I said hello twice, then I hung up. 30 seconds later it rang again, same number. I let it ring. I got up and went to the kitchen. I stood in front of the basement door. The bolt was slid shut. I put my hand flat on the wood. It was cool against my palm. Cooler than the rest of the room, I thought. I told myself it was just an interior door on an outside wall. I didn't feel anything move. I didn't hear anything. I stood there for about 15 seconds, then felt stupid and went back to the couch. I pulled up the Harmon's Ring camera app. Mrs. Harmon had left me the login in case a delivery showed up. I opened the activity log. 3 motion alerts from the driveway in the past hour. I tapped the first one, timestamp 9:12. A white Chevy Tahoe rolled slowly past the house, didn't stop, didn't turn in. Timestamp 9:31, same Tahoe, same slow roll, same direction. Timestamp 9:58, the Tahoe again. This time it stopped for a moment at the edge of the driveway, then kept going. I watched that third clip 3 times. I called Mr. Harmon. He answered on the second ring. I kept my voice even. I told him about the car. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said it was probably just someone turning around. He said the road was a dead end and people did it all the time. I said okay and hung up. I didn't mention what Lily had said. I should have. I sat back down, facing the kitchen. At 10:47, both kids were upstairs. I knew because I had checked 10 minutes earlier. Then I heard it clearly. One slow footstep from directly above me, then another, then nothing. The kids' rooms were at the back of the house. What was directly above the living room was the upstairs hallway and the linen closet. I did not move for about 15 seconds. Then I went to the kitchen. I looked at the basement door. The bolt was no longer flush with the catch. It was slid open about a quarter inch, not all the way, just enough that the door was no longer latched. I had not touched it. I want to be precise about what I felt because it wasn't panic. Not yet, it was something colder and slower than panic. It was the sensation of every reasonable explanation running out at the same time. The sound upstairs could have been the house, the car could have been a neighbor, the phone call could have been a misdial, but I had stood at that door an hour ago and looked directly at that bolt. It had been closed, flush with the catch, exactly the way Mrs. Harmon had shown me. Now there was a quarter inch of air between the bolt and the frame, and the only other people in that house were 2 children asleep at the back of the upstairs floor. I went cold, not movie cold, actually cold, like the temperature in the kitchen had dropped several degrees. The skin on my forearms went tight. I noticed a smell I hadn't caught before, something faintly damp and enclosed, like a gym bag left in a hot car. I don't know if it had been there all night. I didn't wait to find out. I walked upstairs without making a sound. I went to Owen's room first. I shook him awake. He started to say something and I put my finger to my lips. He went quiet. Good kid. I carried him across the hall to Lily's room. She woke up when I set him down on the foot of her bed. I told them both quietly that we were going to play a game. I told them the game was called Staying Very Still and Very Quiet. Lily watched my face and said nothing. Owen nodded. I pushed Lily's dresser in front of the door, not because it would stop anyone, because it would slow someone down and give me noise. I called 911. I kept my voice low. I told the dispatcher I was babysitting on Lake Shore Drive in Portage County, and I believed there was someone in the house. She told me to stay on the line. I texted the Harmons, "Come home now, I think someone is in the house." I sat on the floor with my back against the dresser, both kids pressed against me. Lily had her face against my arm. Owen was watching the door. Neither of them cried. We sat like that for 11 minutes. I heard movement twice, once somewhere below us, a soft, deliberate sound, not the house settling, not the water heater, something with weight and intention behind it, once closer, just outside the door. A single step, heavy enough to make the floorboard creak once, then nothing. I pressed my back into the dresser and kept my breathing even for the kids' sake. Lily's fingers found my wrist and held on. I let her. The patrol car arrived at 11:08. I heard the siren from 2 blocks away and then it cut off. Blue and red light came through the curtains. I moved the dresser, took both kids by the hand and walked them straight out the front door. I handed them to the first officer I saw. I didn't look back at the house. They searched the whole place, upstairs, every room, the first floor, then the basement. In the basement behind the water heater, they found a sleeping bag rolled up tight, a small cooler, an empty water bottle. Whoever had been using that space was gone by the time the officers went in. The back window of the basement had been left open. The screen was cut along the bottom edge, a clean cut like with a box knife, not recent. The officers couldn't tell me how long someone had been down there. They couldn't tell me where that person went. The white Tahoe was gone from the neighborhood. They filed a report. They said someone would follow up. Mr. Harmon arrived about 20 minutes after the police. He stood outside the house for a long time without going in. Mrs. Harmon sat in their car with the kids. I could hear Lily telling her about the man. Her voice was calm, matter of fact, like she was describing something she had always expected someone to finally believe. Mrs. Harmon called me the next morning. She said the cut in the basement window screen had been there for at least 2 months. She had noticed it and thought an animal had done it. She hadn't told anyone. She said Lily had mentioned the noises before, 3 or 4 times over the summer. They had chalked it up to bad dreams. I don't babysit anymore. That's not a statement about anything. I just don't. But if you do listen to the kids, they notice first. Well, he offered me $50 extra if I could bring it after 10 at night. I needed the money, so I said yes. This was October, Central Pennsylvania. I was in my second year at a community college outside of Harrisburg. My rent had gone up in September and my roommate had bylaid 2 weeks before that, so I was covering the whole place on my own. I'd been going through my apartment pulling out anything I could sell, an old gaming chair, some kitchen stuff, a DeWalt circular saw I'd never used. I listed everything on Facebook Marketplace over the course of a week. The saw was $120, barely used. I'd bought it during the pandemic thinking I'd build furniture, which I never did. I posted it on a Tuesday. Messages came in that same day. Most people asked if I'd take less. One guy offered $60 and got rude when I said no, the usual. Then around 9 that night, a new message. The account name was Dan Prescott, profile picture of a middle-aged man in a Carhartt jacket squinting into the sun. His account had been active a few years, a couple of public posts, normal enough. He asked if the saw was still available. I said yes. He asked reasonable questions, blade size, whether it still had the case. Then he said he could do the full asking price cash, but could I drop it off in the evening? I said sure. Then he said he'd prefer after 10. He'd throw in an extra 50 if I could manage it. I didn't think much of it. I figured he was someone who worked long days and didn't want to deal with it until he was home and settled. I told him 10:30 was fine. He sent me an address in a neighborhood I vaguely recognized, a residential street about 20 minutes away, off Route 15 going north. He said to message when I was 5 minutes out. I told my friend Marcus about it while we were watching TV. He just said don't forget to bring the saw, and we laughed, and that was the extent of my preparation. 2 days later he messaged to confirm, still polite, said he had the cash ready. I told him I'd see him that evening. At around 9:30 I loaded the saw into the back of my Tacoma and headed north on Route 15. Cold night even for October. That sharp, dry cold that comes in off the fields and gets into your jacket no matter how it's zipped. I had his address in Google Maps, a regular neighborhood, small rancher-style houses, chain-link fences, basketball hoops in driveways. I was about 10 minutes out when my phone buzzed. New message from Dan. He said there'd been a change. He'd actually be at his brother's place tonight. He sent a new address. I pulled into the parking lot of a Sheetz to look at it. The new address was farther north, much farther. I put it into maps, 23 minutes away, not 10. And the route left Route 15 entirely after a few miles, out onto a county road I didn't recognize, then a smaller road after that. I sat there in that parking lot for a minute. I messaged him and said that was pretty far. He said his brother had a big property, plenty of space to park, no trouble at all. I asked if we could just meet somewhere closer, a gas station maybe. He came back fast. He said he didn't drive, his license was suspended, and his brother couldn't leave either because they had a dog that needed watching. Then he said he'd make it worth my while, $100 extra on top of the asking price now. $220 for a saw I'd paid $300 for 2 years ago. That's what I told myself as I pulled back out onto Route 15. The county road map sent me down had no name on any sign I could see, just a number, County Road 447. The houses got farther apart. After a couple of miles there were no houses at all, just fields and tree lines on both sides, flat central Pennsylvania farmland that goes completely dark at night. No ambient glow, no distant porch lights, nothing. My headlights were doing all the work. The only sounds were gravel ticking up under the wheel wells and the low hum of the engine. At some point I noticed I had turned the radio off without remembering doing it. I messaged him that I was close. He said turn left at the mailbox with the reflective tape. I found it, I turned. The driveway was long, gravel, trees on both sides pressing in close, old trees with thick trunks sitting right at the edge of the road. The branches came over the top. My headlights only showed me the next 30 feet. I went slow, and because I was going slow I had a lot of time to notice things. I cracked the window to listen. The smell was wood rot and leaf damp and something faintly chemical underneath, like old motor oil. No lights through the trees, no sound of a dog. At the end of the driveway, the trees opened into a cleared area in front of a house. A single light burned over the front door, one of those bare bulb fixtures you see over barn doors, throwing a yellow cone down onto the porch steps. Everything outside that cone was dark. I stopped the Tacoma about 30 feet from the house and left the engine running. The windows were dark except for that one porch light. No other cars, just a patch of gravel and weeds and what might have been a tarp-covered shape off to the left. No dog, no sound of a dog. He had mentioned a dog. I messaged that I was out front. He said come on up, he'd meet me at the door. I got out of the truck. The cold hit me immediately, colder back in those trees than it had been on the road. That still cold that sits in low ground and doesn't move. My boots were loud on the gravel. I walked halfway to the porch and stopped. The front door opened before I got there. The man in the doorway did not look like the photo on his profile. He was younger, heavier, gray sweatshirt, drawstring pulled out of the hood, both hands in his front pocket. He didn't say anything right away. He just stood there in the yellow light and looked at me. Not hostile exactly, but very still, very focused. I stopped walking. He said, "You got it in the truck." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Bring it inside, we'll take a look." That was the moment, not the long driveway, not the wrong face, not the missing dog or the dark windows or the smell in the trees. It It was that sentence, bring it inside, a circular saw. You check a circular saw in a parking lot or a driveway. You hold it, check the blade, look at the case, 30 seconds. You do not bring a circular saw inside a house to look at it. There's no reason to do that. I stood there in the gravel and that sentence just opened up in front of me like a gap in the floor. I said, actually, let me grab it from the truck and bring it up to the porch. I turned around and walked back to the Tacoma. My back was to him. I kept my steps even. I did not run. I focused on the gravel in front of me and kept my pace steady and did not look back. I reached the driver's side door and heard the porch boards creak behind me. One board, then another, weight shifting, someone coming down the steps. I opened the door, got in, and put it in reverse. He called out something. I didn't catch it and I didn't want to. I backed down that gravel driveway in the dark as fast as I could without going into the tree line. I watched the rearview camera. The trees made a tunnel around me. The porch light shrank in the front-facing camera until it disappeared around a bend. When I hit the county road, I turned out and drove. I watched the mirror the whole way back to Route 15. No headlights followed me. County Road 447 stayed dark the entire way back. At some point, I turned the radio on just to have something else in the cab with me. I stopped at a Wawa near Mechanicsburg and sat in the parking lot for a while. My hands were not shaking, but they felt like they wanted to. I sat there under the lights with the engine on and the heat going. I bought a coffee I didn't finish. I filed a report that night with the state police. The officer took the address and the Facebook account name and didn't say much, but before she hung up, she said they'd had a couple of reports with a similar pattern over the past few months. She said it the way you'd say something you'd said before, like she was used to saying it. I asked what the pattern was. She said luring. She didn't elaborate. The next morning I checked Marketplace. Dan Prescott's account was gone. The conversation was still in my messages, but his profile showed as unavailable. The saw is still in the back of my closet. I haven't listed it again. I think about the extra 50 a lot, then the extra 100. The way the price kept climbing every time I hesitated. That wasn't generosity. That was calibration. He was figuring out my number. And I think about whoever might have had a lower number than mine. Well, he offered me $40 over asking price if I could drop it off after 9 at night. I said yes before I even thought about it. This was about 3 years ago. I was living in a one-bedroom just off I-40 in Knoxville, working part-time at a tire shop and picking up odd jobs on the side. Rent was due in 4 days. I had $60 in my checking account and a stack of stuff from my last move I'd been meaning to sell since June. The item was a floor lamp, a brushed steel arc lamp with a white drum shade my ex had left behind. I listed it on Craigslist for $35. 2 photos, 4 sentences, posted on a Tuesday afternoon. Within an hour, I had 3 messages. 2 were normal. One offered to pay $45 if I could bring it to him after dark. His username was something generic, Dave K87 or close to that. His message was polite. He said he worked late, had trouble getting out during the day. He offered to Venmo me $10 right now as a deposit if I'd hold it. I told him I'd think about it. He sent the 10 before I responded. I told myself it was fine, people work late. The money was already in my account. I had a lamp to sell. We messaged back and forth for 2 days. He asked about the dimmer switch, said he was redecorating a home office. He gave me an address on the east side of Knoxville over near Rutledge Pike. I looked it up, residential street, brick ranch houses, a church on the corner, riding mowers in the side yards, nothing alarming. We set the meetup for Thursday at 9:30. Then Thursday came. I was loading the lamp into the bed of my Tacoma around 8:30 when he messaged again. He was sorry, but there'd been a change. His brother was visiting. Could I meet him at a different address instead? He sent a pin. I dropped it into maps. It came up on Millertown Pike, but further out than I expected. Not in town, not even close to the address he'd given me before. The last stretch showed as a county road with no streetlights, and the pin landed in what looked like a tree line. I zoomed in and out a few times, trying to find a business name, a unit number, anything that made it make sense. There was nothing, just the pin floating in green. I typed back and asked if the address was right. He said yes, that was his storage unit. He had furniture there already and planned to move the lamp straight in. He said it would be easier. I sat in my driveway for a minute, engine running, heat on. I looked at my phone, then at the lamp strapped in the bed under a bungee cord, then at my phone again. Then I thought about the $60, and I drove anyway. I pulled out around 9 and got on I-40 East. The drive was fine until I got off at Rutledge Pike and started heading north. The road narrowed fast. Gas stations gave way to dark stretches and chain-link fence. I passed a Dollar General with half its parking lot lights burned out, a closed auto shop with plywood over the bay windows, and then nothing. Just the road, the tree line, and my headlights cutting through the dark. He texted when I was about 2 miles out. He said he'd see me soon. I cracked the window to clear some fog off the inside of the glass. The air was cold and damp, the kind that gets into your collar. The road out here smelled different once I got the window down. Mud, pine sap, something faintly chemical underneath it, the way old rural properties smell when they've been used for things nobody bothered to clean up. That's when I noticed the car behind me. A dark sedan, no way to make the model in the dark, no front plate that I could see. It had been there since I turned off Rutledge Pike, maybe a quarter-mile back, its headlights steady in my mirror. I let my speed drop to about 20. It slowed down with me, not tailgating, just matching, keeping the same gap like it was measured. I turned onto the county road his pin was showing. Unmarked, no sign, just a break in the tree line and a strip of cracked asphalt, maybe a lane and a half wide. The kind of road on the county map that nobody repaved after 1987. The sedan turned too. The road went completely dark, no streetlights at all. My headlights were the only thing showing me the pavement. I could hear gravel pinging up into the wheel wells. I passed a rusted gate on the left, chained shut with a heavy logging chain and a padlock that looked newer than everything around it. A stand of pines so dense they blocked whatever sky was left. And then I saw a structure ahead. It wasn't a storage unit. It was a house, old 2-story, white paint peeling away in long strips, one light on upstairs behind a curtain, that amber glow you get from a lamp left on rather than someone moving around. The yard was bare dirt and gravel, no grass, nothing, just earth that had been driven over enough times that nothing grew there anymore. A newer dark pickup sat out front, and a man was standing at the edge of the porch light holding a phone. I stopped at the end of the driveway. I did not pull in. The sedan behind me stopped about 40 yards back, headlights still on, not moving. The man on the porch raised a hand and walked toward me, unhurried, like he had all the time in the world. I rolled my window down about 3 inches. The air that came in was cold, pine, damp soil, and something else underneath it, faintly sweet in a way that wasn't pleasant. A generator somewhere nearby was running, low and steady. I only noticed it because everything else on that property was completely silent. No dogs, no road noise, nothing. He said, "You can pull up closer. I can help you carry it in." That was the moment. Not the sedan, not the fake address. Those things were wrong, but I'd talked myself past them. This was the line that made everything click. Carry it in. He wanted me inside that house. I looked at his face in my headlights. He wasn't threatening looking. Mid-40s, heavy-set flannel shirt over a dark undershirt, hands in his pockets now. But there was nothing behind his eyes when he smiled. No warmth, no impatience, no awkwardness about any of this, no glance back at the house, no acknowledgement that anything was unusual. He looked like a man who had stood at the end of that driveway before, who had said those exact words before, who had watched to see what happened next. He had done this before. The generator kept running, the light stayed on upstairs, the sedan didn't move. I let 3 seconds pass, long enough I wasn't visibly panicking, short enough I was already thinking about reverse. I said, "Hold on," I think something slid around in the bed. Flat calm, I don't know where that came from. I put the truck in reverse. He took 2 steps toward my driver's door. I backed up faster, swinging wide to get around the sedan. My rear tires went off the asphalt onto the shoulder and I felt the gravel shifting. For 1 second I thought I was going to get stuck, that the tires were going to dig in and that would be the whole story, but they caught. I got the nose of my Tacoma pointed back down that county road and I drove. I didn't look at my mirrors for the first half mile. When I finally did, nobody was following me. I got back to Rutledge Pike and pulled into the parking lot of a pilot station. Parked right under the canopy, under the big bright lights over the pumps, engine running, doors locked. I called the non-emergency line for Knox County and told them everything, the address from his PIN, the number Dave had texted from, the Craigslist username, the description of the sedan. The woman on the phone went quiet for a second. Then she said, "Can you stay where you are? I'm going to have someone come take a statement." A Knox County deputy met me at that pilot 20 minutes later. Young, maybe 25, looked like he'd been on shift a while and wasn't surprised by much. He took notes on a small pad and asked about the sedan. Color, make, whether I'd seen the driver. Dark, no make, never saw anyone behind the wheel. He wrote it down. Before he left, he said they'd had reports from that same stretch of Millertown Pike before. He didn't say more than that. He didn't need to. The next morning I checked Craigslist. Dave K87's account was gone. The thread was still in my inbox, but his profile was a dead link. Whatever he'd listed, whatever else he'd been doing on there was scrubbed clean. The $10 Venmo deposit is still in my account. I never spent it. The lamp sat in my living room for 2 more weeks before I sold it to a woman in her 60s who met me in the parking lot of a Kroger at 2 in the afternoon. Cash, fast, normal. She had a hatchback and her granddaughter in the backseat, and she haggled me down to $30, and I let her. I think about that house on Millertown Pike more than I'd like to. I think about the light upstairs, that amber glow behind the curtain. I think about what was up there. Mostly I think about the chain on that gate, padlocked but facing inward, the way you'd lock something if you didn't want it getting out rather than getting in. The lamp wasn't worth it, nothing is.